blue whale rerouted a 104,000-ton warship. A 50-centimeter shark redesigned a nuclear submarine fleet. And the creature that saved the most American lives in combat was never issued a uniform. How does the world's most powerful Navy survive an enemy it cannot bomb, cannot outrun, and cannot negotiate with? Let's find out. 100,000 tons of steel, $13 billion to build, $340 million every single year just to keep it running. 90 aircraft on deck, 5,000 sailors inside, enough firepower to neutralize a regional conflict before breakfast, and a blue whale 150 tons, no rank, no orders, no flag, stopped it cold, not a torpedo, not a storm. A single marine animal forced one of the most powerful warships ever constructed by human hands to change course and weight. Think about that contrast. The United States Navy spent a decade and $13 billion engineering a vessel that can project lethal force anywhere on Earth within 96 hours. Evolution spent roughly 50 million years engineering the blue whale, the largest animal to have ever existed. When those two timelines collide in the same patch of open ocean, it is not always obvious which one holds the advantage. That is not a metaphor. That is operational reality. And it has happened more than once. April 1982, South Atlantic. British Royal Navy warships cut through freezing water at combat speed, hunting Argentine submarines around the Falkland Islands. Every ship runs active sonar around the clock. Tensions are absolute. Contact means threat. Threat means immediate response. The problem of blue whale holding position at depth registers on period sonar systems with an acoustic return nearly identical to a Soviet-built Romeo or Foxtrot-class diesel submarine, same displacement shadow, same depth signature, same slow movement profile. In a live combat environment, there is no time for philosophical debate. Two contacts were engaged with torpedoes before visual identification. Both were whales. A third contact was prosecuted by helicopter-launched torpedo. Another whale dead. Then one warship physically struck a fourth whale at speed, punching structural damage through its own hull, forcing an emergency return to port for repairs. A living creature removed a Royal Navy vessel from active combat operations during a shooting war. The United States Navy studied every detail of that campaign and wrote very specific notes. Here's what the numbers reveal that headlines never do. A Nimitz-class carrier displacing 104,000 tons at full load, cruising at 30 knots, requires between 800 and 1,000 meters of completely clear water to stop even with full reverse thrust applied immediately. Not 200 meters, not 500 meters, 800 to 1,000 meters. In the Pacific off California, when lookouts aboard USS Abraham Lincoln, CVN-72, identified a pod of blue whales crossing the ship's projected path. The officer of the deck had minutes, not hours to act. Every second of hesitation consumed another 15 meters of closing distance. This is the moment nobody discusses in press releases. A full emergency turn on a carrier at 30 knots generates lateral forces across the flight deck, capable of shifting unsecured aircraft and injuring deck crew mid-operation. Holding course risks a collision with animals large enough to cause structural damage on impact. The commanding officer gets no pause button, no committee, no second opinion. He makes the call, and every consequence is his. If you were in that chair, with a flight deck full of aircraft behind you and 150-ton animals crossing your bow, what do? Drop your answer in the comments right now. The AN/SQS-53C hull-mounted sonar on Arleigh Burke-class destroyers cannot cleanly distinguish a sperm whale at 400 meters from a Kilo-class submarine at the same depth. The acoustic cross-section overlaps in ways no software patch has fully resolved. So the Navy built the solution around human eyes instead of machine ears. Every carrier strike group now maintains trained marine mammal lookouts on elevated stations around the clock, with mandatory speed reductions enforced under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Federal law requires any U.S. Navy vessel to maintain a speed at which it can avoid striking any observed marine mammal. The ocean does not care about your orders. It does not care how much the ship cost.
If this kind of story, the kind that never makes the official briefing, is what you come here for, hit subscribe, one click, it costs nothing. What comes next will cost you sleep, because physical collision is not even close to the most dangerous way this relationship breaks down. The weapon that has caused the most documented damage is completely invisible. You cannot see it, you cannot feel it, and the Navy was forced to admit its effects in federal court.
Sound travels through seawater at approximately 1,500 meters per second, more than 4 times faster than in air. The ocean does not merely carry sound. It amplifies it, focuses it, and channels it across distances impossible on land. That physical fact is the foundation of every submarine detection system ever built. It is also the reason 17 marine mammals died on Bahamian beaches, and why the United States Navy spent years afterward in federal court explaining what it knew and exactly when it knew it. The AN/SQS-53C active sonar fitted on Arleigh, Burke-class DDG destroyers transmits acoustic pulses at approximately 3.5 kilohertz with a source level reaching 235 decibels, reference to 1 micropascal underwater. The human pain threshold sits around 130 decibels in air. Every 10 decibels represents a 10-fold increase in acoustic energy. The gap between 130 and 235 represents a pressure wave roughly 1 million times more intense than what caused a human being physical agony, and at 3.5 kilohertz, that pulse propagates effectively for tens of kilometers through favorable ocean conditions. Everything in that path receives the signal, whether it was intended to or not.
Cuvier's beaked whale, Xiphias cavarostris, holds the verified world record for deepest mammalian dive, 2,992 meters, sustained for 137 minutes, documented by researchers off the California coast. These animals manage extreme nitrogen saturation through a precisely controlled, slow ascent. Their entire cardiovascular system is engineered around that process. When intense mid-frequency sonar reaches one of these animals at depth, researchers at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution identify what happens. The acoustic energy triggers panic. The whale ascends too fast. Nitrogen forms bubbles in blood and tissue. The result is decompression sickness hemorrhaging around the brain, ears, and organs. The same condition that kills human divers, caused by sound.
U.S. Navy destroyers conducted routine active sonar training in the Providence Channel, Bahamas. Within 36 hours, 17 marine mammals had stranded on nearby beaches, 14 of them Cuvier's beaked whales, several showing hemorrhaging around the ears, consistent with acute acoustic trauma. The Navy commissioned an investigation. The investigation confirmed the link. That confirmation was not the surprise. What internal research records revealed was that concerns about mid-frequency sonar effects on beaked whales had circulated inside acoustic research communities since the mid-1990s. The Bahamas event was not the first warning. It was simply the first too large and too public to contain. The Natural Resources Defense Council filed suit against the Navy in 2008, arguing that training exercises off Southern California violated the National Environmental Policy Act.
The case reached the United States Supreme Court as Winter versus Natural Resources Defense Council. The court ruled for the Navy on national security grounds, but the institutional pressure generated by that litigation produced real operational change. Ships must now cease active sonar transmission if a marine mammal is detected within 200 yards. Pre-exercise clearance scans are mandatory.
The upgraded passive monitoring network, a descendant of the Cold War SOSUS hydrophone arrays originally built to track Soviet submarines across the North Atlantic, now provides real-time acoustic presence data for marine mammal populations across active training ranges, 24 hours a day. The Navy's annual marine mammal research commitment now consistently exceeds $10 million, directed toward species distribution modeling, acoustic behavior studies, and detection systems. Those numbers matter, but here is what they cannot undo. The internal research documents confirming the sonar risk to beaked whales existed 3 years before the photographs were taken on those Bahamian beaches photographs, showing blood around the ears of animals that, hours earlier, had been doing exactly what 50 million years of evolution designed them to do: diving deep, hunting in darkness, living inside a world made entirely of sound. Do you think the Navy should have faced harder legal consequences for what happened? Drop yes or no in the comments right now. If whales became casualties of the technology built to protect sailors, then what sharks did to those same sailors is written not in sonar logs or legal briefs, but in 4 days of open ocean. 879 men in the water, and a silence from command that history has never forgiven. USS Indianapolis CA-35, a Portland-class heavy cruiser, was struck by 2 Type 95 torpedoes fired by Japanese submarine I-58 at 12:14 a.m. on July 30th, 1945. The ship sank in approximately 12 minutes. Around 900 men entered the Pacific Ocean alive. What followed across the next 4 days became the single deadliest mass shark attack in recorded human history. But the sharks were not the only thing that killed those men. Before the first fin broke the surface, the United States Navy had already failed them completely. Indianapolis transmitted SOS distress signals 3 separate times after the strike. All 3 were received. All 3 were ignored, one by an officer who assumed it was a Japanese deception, one by a commander who was intoxicated, one by a duty officer who ordered his men not to disturb him. Nature did not kill 879 men alone. Bureaucracy opened the door.
The species responsible for the majority of attacks was not the great white, it was the oceanic white-tip. Carcharhinus longimanus, a deep-water, open ocean predator that Jacques Cousteau once described as the most dangerous of all sharks. Unlike the great white, in which typically strikes once and retreats, the oceanic white-tip is a persistent, competitive feeder.
In open ocean mass casualty environments, where blood, movement, and struggling prey saturate the water across a wide area, this species does not disengage. It feeds in extended cycles, over 4 days, with approximately 900 men spread across several square miles of Pacific Ocean. The conditions were precisely what Carcharhinus longimanus is biologically optimized to exploit. Survivors described attacks that came without pause, without warning, and without any pattern that could be predicted or countered. Men on the outer edges of survivor clusters were taken first. Anyone bleeding had almost no measurable chance. By the 3rd night, the Indianapolis survivors had been without fresh water for over 60 hours. Saltwater poisoning, dehydration, and exposure-induced psychosis had begun fragmenting the groups. Men started hallucinating some, believed they could see a hotel below the surface and attempted to swim down toward it. Others became convinced that specific crewmates were Japanese agents and attacked them. The sharks were still present. The distinction between who died from marine predation and who died from human violence in those final hours is impossible to calculate with precision. Historians estimate between 80 and 150 deaths were directly attributable to shark attack.
The total loss, 880 men dead, 316 recovered. It remains the greatest single loss of life in U.S. Navy history from a single ship. The Navy's response to Indianapolis did not produce an effective counter.
Beginning with the wartime-era shark chaser compound, a mixture of black dye, copper acetate, and decomposing shark tissue packed into flotation vests and running through 9 successive development generations under the formal shark screen program tested. Between 1971 and 2000, no device or chemical compound achieved sufficient real-world effectiveness to justify fleet-wide deployment. The electrical field deterrents, the acoustic emitters, the chemical barriers each generation showed partial results in controlled conditions and failed under operational variables. As of today, no military force on Earth has adopted a universally effective shark repellent for combat swimmer protection. In this specific contest, after 80 years of engineering effort, the ocean has not conceded a single point. Here's where the story takes a turn that belongs in an engineering textbook. Icistus brasiliensis, the cookie cutter shark, reaches a maximum length of approximately 50 centimeters. It is bioluminescent, deep water, and virtually unknown to the general public. Its feeding mechanism is anatomically unique. It locks onto a surface using a suction cup lip structure, rotates its lower jaw, and removes a geometrically precise circular plug of material. Researchers later confirmed cookie-cutter bites on NATO signal cables in the Mediterranean and on SOSUS acoustic monitoring buoys across the North Atlantic. The Navy's Los Angeles-class submarines, SSN 688 flight variants, were returning from extended patrols with circular gouges punched through the neoprene rubber acoustic anechoic coating applied to their exterior hulls, the material specifically engineered to reduce their sonar cross-section and acoustic signature. The Navy investigated. The culprit was identified. The fix required replacing vulnerable rubber sections with hard fiberglass composite housings across the entire SSN 688 class. The total cost ran into tens of millions of dollars. A 50-centimeter animal forced a design retrofit across one of the most advanced submarine fleets ever built. Did you know the Indianapolis disaster was suppressed for decades after the war ended, and that the ship's commanding officer was court-martialed despite being exonerated by history? Drop your answer below. But here's what no one sees coming. The creatures that hunted sailors, redesigned submarines, and confounded every repellent the Navy ever built. Those same biological systems became the most effective protective force the United States military has ever fielded underwater.
And they are on active duty right now. The bottlenose dolphin, Terziops truncatus, produces echolocation clicks at frequencies reaching 200 kilohertz, far beyond the upper range of any human-built active sonar, optimized for mine detection. At 100 meters of depth, in complete darkness, with zero visibility, a trained Navy dolphin can resolve spatial detail to approximately 1 centimeter. It can identify the material composition, shape, and orientation of an object buried in sediment at that depth faster, more accurately, and in worse environmental conditions than any unmanned underwater vehicle the United States has ever produced. The most advanced UUV in current U.S. Navy inventory, the Boeing Echo Voyager, costs approximately $4 million per unit and cannot replicate that detection resolution in cluttered shallow water environments. Evolution built a better sensor.
The Navy just learned how to aim it. The U.S. Navy Marine Mammal Program was established in 1960 at Point Mugu, California, when Navy researchers acquired a Pacific white-sided dolphin to study hydrodynamic drag. The goal was improving torpedo body design. What they discovered inside the first year redirected the entire program. These animals were not just hydrodynamically efficient. They were trainable to operational precision, capable of functioning in open ocean without restraint, and possessed sensory system that no existing technology could match. The program relocated to Naval Base Point Loma in San Diego, where it operates today under Space and Naval Warfare Systems Command. It currently maintains 5 operational MK teams, MK4, MK7, and MK8, use bottlenose dolphins for mine detection and marking. MK5 uses California sea lions for object recovery and personnel detection. MK6 uses both species for harbor and ship protection against hostile combat divers. On March 21st, 2003, 2 days after coalition forces crossed the Iraqi border, the port of Qasr was confirmed to contain Iraqi naval mines blocking the approach, channel mines that would prevent humanitarian supply ships and coalition vessels from entering. The decision was made to deploy MK4 dolphins.
K-Dog, a trained bottlenose dolphin operating under Navy handler Petty Officer Taylor Sherrill, entered the water in near zero visibility conditions. No GPS, no radar, no artificial guidance of any kind. Using biological echolocation alone, K-Dog swept the channel, located mines, and marked their positions with acoustic transponders for human disposal teams. The channel was cleared, coalition ships entered safely.
A dolphin, operating on 20 million years of evolved biology, opened the port that started the coalition's logistics operation in southern Iraq. Training a single bottlenose dolphin to full operational readiness costs the Navy approximately $500,000 and requires a minimum of 5 years of consistent work with a dedicated handler team. That figure for an animal that outperforms multi-million-dollar UUVs in its core mission represents one of the most asymmetric value price ratios in the entire defense acquisition system. The program currently has nearly 20 veterinarians on permanent standby. Navy dolphins live approximately twice as long as their wild counterparts. Navy sea lions live up to 3 times longer. Blue, a bottlenose dolphin who entered the program around 1964, was featured in a New York Times profile in 2023 at an estimated age of 57, having served across multiple decades of active operations, including the first Gulf War in 1991, 31 years of operational service, longer than the career of most commissioned officers. The Navy is currently testing integrated sensor platforms in which trained dolphins carry lightweight acoustic and water quality monitoring devices during patrol cycles. Data transmits in real time to surface command stations. The combination of biological detection sensitivity and digital data infrastructure represents a capability gap that no purely mechanical system has closed. Mk6 dolphins patrol a 1,500-meter radius around Pacific Fleet installations at San Diego, operating in 4-hour independent patrol cycles, surfacing to report contacts through conditioned behavioral signals to their handlers. The ocean's most sophisticated sonar system is currently guarding the Navy's front door. After everything the whales that redirected warships, the sonar that killed what it could not see, the sharks that defeated 80 years of engineering, the dolphins that cleared a minefield with sound, the pattern is the same every time. The United States Navy, the most powerful maritime force in human history, did not conquer the ocean. It learned to listen to it. Every time brute force met biology, biology held its ground. Every solution that worked came from study, adaptation, and in some cases, partnership with the very creature that posed the original problem. After everything you heard today, the bureaucratic silence that abandoned 879 men, the 50-centimeter shark that redesigned a fleet, the dolphin that opened a war zone port. What surprised you most? Tell us in the comments.